Starting the year strong is easier and more delicious with Omaha Steaks premium pre-packaged proteins. From handcrafted USDA-certified tender steaks to gourmet burgers, versatile chicken and pork, and more. Every steak is perfectly aged to maximize tenderness and hand-cut by master butchers in America's heartland. Let Omaha Steaks deliver high-quality proteins right to your door. Visit omahasteaks.com and get an extra $35 off with promo code AUDIO at checkout. Terms apply. See site for details.
Three years ago this month, we brought you the story of NiShan Huff, who was murdered on June 7th, 2006. At that point, her case had been cold for 13 years. We covered NiShan's case in the Carolina Girls series. There will be a link in our show notes. To interview NiShan's family, we drove up to Greenville, South Carolina, to meet her mother, Sacha, and her sister, Chiquita. We were able to speak with her sister, India, on the phone. She was living out of state. NiShan had graduated from Francis Marion University that spring with a double major in journalism and Spanish. She had been an active member of Zeta Phi Beta sorority, studied abroad, and worked through college, putting money aside so she could buy her first home. In fact, she'd just gone to see a house in Piedmont, South Carolina that day, the last day of her life. She told her sister, Chiquita, a realtor, that she wanted to make an offer. NiShan had been living in an apartment with her boyfriend Alvin at the time. It was an apartment Chiquita had lived in while she'd finished school. Then Alvin had moved in, and NiShan spent time there with him and his young daughter. It had been a quiet, warm Wednesday afternoon in Greenville. Alvin had left to go to the barber shop and to pick up his daughter. When they returned, they found NiShan on the floor. She'd been shot. There were signs of a struggle. A neighbor would later recall that they'd heard screaming, but they hadn't called police. Nearby neighbors told reporters that NiShan had been shot 3 times in the head, though in those earliest reports, the coroner declined to comment on the precise placement of her wounds and how many shots there had been. He did verify that she had died of a gunshot wound, and NiShan's family rushed from every corner of the city, and some from even farther away, to reach her. As we told you back in 2019, there was no immediate, clear motive in the case, and none was established as NiShan's case progressed. There hadn't been a robbery. Sacha told us that there was no indication that NiShan had disputes or ongoing conflicts with anyone, or any issues with substance abuse, and the coroner's testing confirmed that. At the time of her death, and in the weeks and months after, a number of community members expressed frustration that a similar death, the murder of a young woman in Clemson, South Carolina, about NiShan's age, also a high achiever, in a sorority, but white, had received significantly more attention in the media, and they worried, more law enforcement investment. At one point, there was a tip line established and a full-time investigator assigned to NiShan's case. But, as with most cases, as the leads became less frequent, other cases would take priority. But NiShan's family continued their press for attention, and they did not let anyone in Greenville forget about her. Every single year since her death, they have held a vigil for her, on the anniversary of her death, at the apartment complex where NiShan lived and was murdered. And we believe that must have been key in some way, because they kept NiShan in the eyes and the memories and the hearts of the residents there. The news reported on her story every year, when they might not have otherwise. Her picture ran in the newspaper. Everyone was reminded, and perhaps people who might not have wanted to speak 16 years ago, they began to feel like they could come forward. 3 years ago, we ended episode 3 of Carolina Girls, NiShan's episode, with these words: "This case can be solved." And as of Tuesday, June 14th, 2022, a huge announcement came. According to ABC 13 News, the Greenville Sheriff's Office announced on June 14th that 2 arrests had been made in the cold case homicide of NiShan Huff. On that same day, India, NiShan's sister, got in touch with us to let us know that the arrests had been made. The details are still unfolding, but here's what we know so far. ABC 13 reported that a break in the case came when, quote, investigators re-interviewed existing witnesses and newly developed witnesses during the investigation, unquote. These interviews led investigators to 2 persons of interest, and subsequently, they arrested 53-year-old Frank Roser and 38-year-old Brittany Nicole Goldsmith. Greer today reported that, while the motive for NiShan's murder has not been announced, she and Roser were acquainted in some way, and the newspaper was able to offer several more details. They report that Roser allegedly entered the apartment and shot NiShan, and that Goldsmith was accused of, quote, covering the crime up by providing false information to law enforcement and intimidating a witness not to come forward. They also listed the pair's charges. Frank Roser was charged with murder and possession of a weapon during a violent crime. Brittany Goldsmith was charged with accessory after the fact. And WYFF News reported that the Greenville County Sheriff's Office apparently formed a cold case investigative unit in 2020, and that NiShan's case is the 8th cold case, quote, closed since it began. Our thoughts are with NiShan's family as they begin a new and difficult process, and we'll bring you any further updates or calls to action that they'd like us to share. Thank you for listening to the stories presented on this show, and for supporting the families who share them. Platforms matter. Keeping names in the news matters. Asking for and expecting more can go a long way.
We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Styles McKenzie helping you make those rooms sing. Today's style tip: when it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild, like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Arr, fierce. This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.